Kenya. And let's continue with our discussion. And we've seen the latest numbers there from the IEBC. The tallying getting closer to the 10 million mark. Raila Odinga on 4.4 million, Uhuru Kenyatta on 5.3 million. But a very interesting figure, 247,000. That is the total number of rejected votes. What is your take on this, Oshua?
One, I must thank your station. I see you use your senior reporters to get their views on issues. I saw my friend Alan Namu and Mutua. I must appreciate your respect for your senior staffers.
Colleagues.
To talk to them. Now, turning now to your question. To me, 247,000 spoiled votes or rejected votes is a bit on the higher side. One would want to ask, has that come as a result of the voters not knowing how to place the markings on those papers? Then the next question is, what my colleague said earlier on, there is need on the part of IEBC to increase voter education, giving voters the knowledge on how to mark their papers. I'm aware people could have also marked the candidate of their choice with a tick and the candidate they didn't want with an X. The two types of markings are correct.
Right.
But propaganda gave the people that impression that you mark a candidate when you don't want with an X and the candidate you want with a tick. Now, doing two markings on one ballot paper automatically turns that ballot paper into a spoiled ballot paper. So it really hinges on the issue of civic education. Number two, even the clerks who are at the station should have been able to assist the older members of society, the elders, the seniors, should have assisted them in telling them whom do you want marked. Uhuru Kenyatta, then appropriately mark for that person in the view of the voter and the agents, so that it's done well. I want to appreciate what they did today, which I have never seen them before. They were helping placement of ballot papers into the box to whatever voter it was. Because when you reach there, iko kuchanganyikiwa. You don't know which box is which box.
Right.
But I saw they had put two people to assist the voters in doing that. But it's surprising they did not place persons to assist in marking those ballot papers. The other reason is there somebody playing games so that we have 247,000? You know, that sends me back to 2013, where we had almost the same number, and by some mysterious way, it came down until it was almost 10,000 spoiled ballot papers. So one needs to ask that question. Is it in that context,
What's really happening?
It is because of poor civic education to the voters?
What's your take on this?
I think I agree with Waziri here. Voter education, certainly there wasn't time for that. I think things happened so fast with the change of commissioners up to the time of the election. I didn't see any civic education done. Equally, not so much voter education was done. So that clearly was lacking. But having said that, we must also respect the view of voters. Maybe there are people, for a while I was undecided on who to vote for, really, because none of the candidates was fully inspiring me to vote. Last minute I decided to vote for one of them. There could have been many. We remember during the polls, about 5-10% were quite undecided for a while.
Right.
So that could be a possibility, but I think more likely it would be vital to look at this nearly 250,000 of votes that were spoiled. It would be very essential to find out what exactly may have happened, because there could be more. They could From the way things are going, it could reach 500,000.
Right, because
Or
that
even
is,
a
that is half.
or even 1 million
Tally.
of spoiled
Yeah,
votes.
yeah.
So we need to look into that. But having said that, one thing that's clear to me, that regardless of who wins this election, first taking the Jubilee side, really, and bearing in mind that the polls showed that this is a close election. Even the figures, although there is a 1 million gap, clearly still close. And it could go either way. My premise taking the Jubilee side is that the leadership must ask, did they need to struggle to fight so hard to win this election? If you ask me if they had done certain things right in the 4.5 years they were in power, this should not have been necessary. It should have been an easy walkover. Two things stick out, and they have come out clearly. The issue of graft and the issue of exclusion. The fact that 42 communities felt excluded in this government. My hope is that if Jubilee wins, as they seem to be, that is something that's going to be rectified.
All right.
Talking also for the other group, to give them credit, I think they kind of try to reflect the face of Kenya, but still authenticity was lacking. I could see the leadership on NASA side saying things that they were not doing. So again, even if NASA wins, I hope that they will also remember that Kenyans are tired of corruption, Kenyans are tired of ethnicity, and Kenyans are tired of inequalities. I could see NASA leadership defending, Kilifi leadership when there's a problem of graft. So authenticity is an issue that we need to be sure that the next leadership is going to have. But finally, on that score,
Yes.
I should also give credit to both sides. My hope was that there's no better way to unite Kenya than, say, NASA getting 30% or 25% of the votes in Central, and Jubilee getting 25-30% of the votes in Luo Nyanza. I think there was a bit of an attempt, but even if we just get 10% each on each side, I think those are the first building blocks to bring together the country.
Making it a
But
democracy.
ethnicity
Yes.
really plays out.
Right.
When you see Uhuru Kenyatta in Central Province,
Yes.
he's really,
95% plus.
Right.
I mean, he's getting 95%, and you find Raila at the ground level.
Right.
The same thing with Uhuru on the other side. That seriously is negative ethnicity amongst our people.
Right.
So whoever wins this election
Sure.
must address the issue of ethnicity.
Correct.
You have been.
Must bring people
Yes.
together.
On that point, what do you think needs to be done in this country? I mean, you've been involved in these campaigns on the ground, dealing with people. What needs to be done so that Kenyans stop voting on that basis of ethnicity? That is indeed what they're doing.
I think the leaders must appreciate inclusivity
Right.
in everything they do. Must realize recognition is of great importance in management of public affairs. That you recognize this community. Like, for example, I must appreciate what has been done for the Makonde group out at in Kwale. They have been sidelined for many years, but you now see the way they have been recognized, and you get them. You look at them; they are now vibrant in joining the affairs or in getting involved in the management of this nation.
Right.
I don't know what the Asian community will do, but we must have those leaders who are in power to have equity and inclusivity in everything they do,
All right.
Yeah.
without really caring that this person, I want him to be a cabinet secretary. It doesn't matter whether he's from El Molo. What matters is, does he merit
All right.
that position?
Do you think that is the ethnicity, the fact that Uhuru Kenyatta gets a lot of votes from his background, and the same for Raila Odinga, for instance? During the presidential election, Raila Odinga was asked the same question.
Right.
He said there's nothing wrong with that. It happens all over the world. What do you think?
To an extent, he's right, but not totally. For me, I would look at two issues. First is authenticity, I've talked about. Do our leaders mean what they say? I'm yet to see that. I've seen leaders on both sides of the divide say, we want a united Kenya, we stand for a united Kenya, but at the end of the day, they don't act it. Related also to that is merit. I think Kenya, look at how we've performed even in the past 5 years. Around 5% growth. Kenya should be doing double-digit growth. Okay, 10. That's what was envisaged in the Vision 2030. 10, 12% growth. Close to what Ethiopia has been doing. Rwanda has consistently been doing 7, 8% growth per annum, much better than us. That's because have we given the Kenya its best? There are people, there's expertise. We need to give the Kenyans best expertise, whether they come from the Makonde or the Asian community. Can we allow merit? So merit for me and authenticity are one thing that we must embrace. Secondly is the Truth and Justice Commission, Truth, Justice and Reconciliation report, the TJRC report.
Yes.
I think the next government, at one stage, we may run away from it, but someday a government's going to implement it. And I think the sooner we implement it, so that we address the historical injustices and reconcile the nation, much so the better. And I'm hoping that the next government, whether it's Jubilee or NASA, is going to take it up when it's still early, far away from the Constitution, from the next election, so that we say, okay, just like the Bible also says, God tells us, I think it's Corinthians, if I'm not mistaken, that if my people who are called by my name repent, let's say,
Chronicles.
Thank you.
It's the book of Chronicles,
let's come back. Let's say that there's somewhere we have gone wrong as a people.
Right.
And it's not bad to forgive. How can we forgive and come together as one? I wouldn't feel happy that I win because I have 50 plus 1. I don't care about the 49%. No, I would be very happy that somebody wins with, say, 70%, so that you really have got true confidence of the people to rule them. So my thinking is the two solutions: let's be authentic, let's also embrace merit, and finally, let's look into reconciling the nation.
All right.
Coming on that, is there meaning, is there value on the manifestos, which are brought out in a very elaborate ceremony by these political parties? Do they really translate what they have pledged in the manifestos as a working document for their governments when they win the elections? To a large extent, they simply do a bit of it.
All right.
So I think as we elect governments,
All right.
let us put them to task. Let us make them to truly implement what they pledged in the manifesto, which has precipitated our electing them.
All right.
Otherwise, if we leave them on that, then promises are of no use. And yet they say a promise is a debt. So let us really make it to be a debt that they must implement the manifestos.
Let's continue talking about Kenya's growth as a democracy. Now, we're talking about the two front runners in this presidential election. It is obviously a two-horse race from the results we've seen from almost 10 million.
And camels.
So, but we still have 8 presidential candidates. The same number as we had in 2013. Waziri, what does that mean for Kenya's growth as a democracy? That we have so many people wanting to be presidents, others obviously maybe don't have a chance. What is the real position of this?
I think it all begins, Ben, on the issue of political parties. The political parties we have in this country is far large, far huge a number than one would have. If you go to the Western world, you find like the main parties in the United States, Republican and Democrats. You go to UK, it is a Conservative and Labour. And if you went to Australia, you find the same. Most of these developed countries, we need to appreciate that we need to consolidate our minds. I really want to appreciate what Jubilee was doing initially, when they were bringing all these other parties
Into one party.
into itself, so that they are one party. But you see, somewhere along the way also, they broke it also. And then they started now allowing a couple of, a few more others, which kind of distorted their original plan
Yes.
of bringing the country into one party. Now, why? It reduces on strife over in debating ideas. That is, if you brought them to be, if you narrowed the number of parties as is in the Western world.
Right.
Again, it will also reduce in time.
So it will take care of itself.
Yeah, it will take care of itself.
Right.
But for as long as we are having it free for all, then I will come by and say I want to be a candidate. And yet, now we are seeing on the results, somebody is getting 0.0000. Really, it's a waste and an abuse of our democratic process.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Bwana Daktari? You are a running mate in 2013 to Safina's
Yeah.
Bob. Is it healthy for democracy like Kenya?
I think so, Ben. Actually, to be fair to the 6 other candidates, I want to give credit to 2 especially. They're doing much better than I thought they would. And I think that's commendable, considering a number of factors, especially the time by which they declared they're going to run for presidency. You know, the 2 big horses, all along we knew they were in the race and campaigning, and both sides were, to an extent, using state resources, whether it's at the national level or county level, a fact that these other candidates didn't have, because they didn't have any governors, they didn't have any CSS, and so on and so forth. So I think I would be fair, to be fair to them, we need a third force. And perhaps with the exception of the US, many of the other countries, they have a third force. That's
Even
important.
the US they have.
Yes.
The Green Party.
Yeah, but maybe not as prominent as it, say, like in
UK.
Germany or in the UK, where the Lib Dems, or even Australia, where the Liberal Democrats tend to be very prominent. So I think having a third party, a third force, is commendable, and I'm hoping that, and the independents, I'm hoping that we see more independents being elected into, for example, parliament and so on and so forth, so that they can hive a third force.
Right.
So in the end, I think that's healthy for our country.
Talking about independence, where do you see the independents who are in this election? Because there are quite a number of them. How do you see them performing? And what will be the status of the Governor's Council, maybe Parliament, National Assembly, and the Senate? What would that mean if we have a number of them elected into
Let's
office?
begin from the beginning. Why are there independent candidates today?
Right.
Why? The answer is very simple. It was shambolic nomination process for all parties, not one party. All the parties got themselves in weird situations,
Right.
such that they messed up their nomination processes. Consequently, we now have individuals who rightly thought they won the nominations.
So the
and
nominations.
indeed, there are some
Just hold that thought. Let's just bring our viewers the latest numbers from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. As you can see on your screen, Uhuru Kenyatta, the Jubilee candidate in command, has 5,602,722 votes so far. That is 55.22% of the total votes cast so far. NASA's Raila Odinga has 4,462,244. That is about 43.98% of the total votes cast. Remember, we are just approaching that 10 million mark out of the 19.6 million registered voters. Joseph Nyaga, independent candidate, has 24,956, 0.25% of the votes. Alliance for Real Change Kenya candidate Mohamed Abdu Badida has 17,806 votes. That is about 0.18% of the total votes cast so far. Ekuru Aukot of the Third Alliance Kenya has 17,605. That is about 0.17% of the total votes cast. Independent candidate Japhet Kaluyu Kavinga has 7,485, 0.07% of the total votes cast. Taking a look at the other candidates, UDP's Cyrus Jirongo has 171. That is 0.07% of the votes cast. An independent candidate, Michael Wainaina, has 5,541. That is 0.05%. That is the latest from the IEBC. Of course, we are keeping a close eye on that to see how those figures are coming along. Let me come back to you, Waziri. Your points. You're making a point about
independent.
the number of...
Yeah, the number of independents.
Yes.
Now, but you see again...
Shambolic nominations.
In shambolic nominations, then we gave birth to independent candidates. The only problem is that the main two parties, they campaigned vigorously on a six-piece suit.
Right.
In the process, therefore, you will see, again, these independent candidates again shoved aside. A good number of them will not win the elections. And in fact, I won't be surprised if none of them don't win the elections. So again, you are back to the issue of these two.
So you don't see many of them doing well?
I don't see too many of them doing well.
All right.
Take, for example, my county, Kericho. Virtually every member of parliament has an independent candidate. Every MCA almost has got an independent candidate. The senator has got an independent candidate. The governor, I think, has an independent candidate. And they are all saying Jubilee.
All right.
Now, so in the process, you are creating a disgruntled unit there, which I think they will end up to where my good friend Ojwode is saying.
All right.
They will go to form a third force.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, I did say, Ben, earlier on that for me there are 5 major ways to rig or unrig an election. First, I did say disenfranchisement of 6 million potential voters. The 3 million being diaspora who didn't have a chance to vote or register and vote, and the other 3 million people who either didn't have IDs on time. We do know that people on border counties and districts find it very difficult to get IDs.
Right.
We also know that young, newly married women also are told you go back to your parents to get your IDs. So it becomes very difficult. I estimate that about 3 million Kenyans, considering also that every single day there's a Kenyan, or a number of them, or tens of thousands, turning 18, from the last time we stopped registration. So I estimate that 3 million Kenyans have been disenfranchised because they were not able to register to vote, apart from the diaspora. So that's 6 million.
Right.
In total, it's 30% of eligible voters, if you take the total number of 19 million. In fact, this is one thing that, while I'm delighted at the level of interest that our elections are creating, not only regionally but globally, but I feel that some of the observers came into the game a little rather late, particularly those who came, say, a week to the elections. Because as Waziri was saying here, there were shambolic nominations. I think that the elections, it just doesn't happen on the election day or the week to the election. It all starts about a year earlier.
That's right.
So I welcome the long-term observers who have been there before. So first was that disenfranchisement of 30% of eligible voters. The other is, of course, the shambolic party primaries. I do know that there are people who genuinely lost, but still wanted to be on the ballot. But there are also a significant number who are rigged out, knowing that myself I've suffered that fate in the past, where you go through a nomination and you win. As we are waiting, midnight, it's announced that Nairobi has struck you off. So there are many who go through those kind of pains.
Right.
So I'm not surprised there are so many independent candidates. But having said that, I think moving forward, multipartyism is healthy for our country, but I'm glad that our constitution also provided for independent candidates. But I also, bearing that in mind, that IBC also made some mistakes. I remember, personally, I was in the appeal court until Friday. This last Friday, I was to be a senatorial candidate.
Right.
But it got to a stage where I said I had the option of going to the Supreme Court, but I said, no, it's not a do or die. It's not a life and death. I also know that there were candidates where the Supreme Court ruled on Sunday, you know, in the case of Moroni constituency.
Right.
Many of these faults were faults of IBC. If they had done their work
and one
in
in
the
Embu.
earlier, that's right. If they had done their work well, flimsy excuses should not be used to deny people their right to run for office. Neither should it be used to deny also constituents a right to elect whoever
But
they
how
want.
much of the blame should the political parties take?
I think in this particular regard, most of it was IBC, because I went through the whole process. I remember there were about 300 people before IBC tribunal for very flimsy reasons. The law is very clear in Article 83(3). It says IBC shall make administrative arrangements to facilitate, not to deny people rights to run for office. The same Article 20, I think 2B, says that even the courts in interpreting, they should interpret the laws in such a way that they enable people to enjoy those rights,
Right.
the political rights, not deny them.
As we wind
Why
up,
was
yes.
why were
Very
the
quickly.
main parties so determined on the issue of 6P suit? They were seeing ahead. They were seeing the situation in Parliament. They could not trust as much of these independent candidates in Parliament when it comes to voting for this and that. So that's why they were insisting on 6P suit, so that
The
they
numbers.
do not have people some gray areas when they are in the House, when they want some voting for this and
Right.
that.
All right.
So that is the reason why you found the main parties
All right.
totally against.
As we wind up this discussion, I want to ask you for your crystal ball. Not who you think is going to win the presidential election, but do you think it's going to be a first round win? What is your prediction?
I wish I had known the current situation in terms of the count. I would be able to.
Well, roughly it's almost half.
It's almost half.
A bit, yes.
Then it is too close to call.
All right.
To me, I think it is too close to call. Although I have heard you talk of 10 million strong, it was not for both. We have not reached there for both parties. It was NASA 10 million strong. Jubilee, although they didn't say it, it was also in the same direction.
Right.
Although they were talking 45, 48 million strong. So
Those are the
I
numbers
think
right now.
in my, I wish I also knew
million,
what I heard somebody saying.
4.4 million.
What I heard Barack Moluka saying. Where have these votes come from?
All right.
These 5.6 for the president,
From
Uhuru
which
Kenyatta,
regions?
4.4 for Raila Odinga. Where have they come from? Have they been allocated to a place? If they had been allocated to a place for me to understand it there,
Right.
then I would be able to tell you, yes, we are heading like this.
So you don't have enough information to
I don't
make
have
that
enough
decision.
information.
Daktari,
I-
55%,
yeah.
43%.
I think to an extent I would agree with my brother here. However, having said that, just purely going by the opinion polls, that this has been a very close fight. But my experience, again, from politics of 2-3 decades, the opposition for NASA to have come together, there was a momentum they were really picking up. But also from experience, to beat the incumbent, you do not need anything less than 5% gap. You really, like in 202, because we were then opposition,
Right.
our target was a 10% clear lead over Kanu. So
Right.
that even with some misnomer, you still
You're safe.
win.
It's a safe
So
number.
to that extent, in as much as there was some kind of momentum for the
Right.
opposition, I would be surprised.
Final question. When do you think we'll know who the next president is? From the pace that you're seeing the IBC releasing these results.
I think by end of day tomorrow we should be able to know, because
think the same.
at least 80% of the votes should have been counted.
Right.
So it should be clear to Kenya.
Kunal.
I had thought 3 days, but looking at the pace, like he says, I am tempted to say anything towards 5, 6 o'clock
All right.
tomorrow.
Right.
Assuming, Ben, that these figures are authentic.
All right.
'Cause-
Yes, of course. They are provisional from the
Yeah,
IBC. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
you.
Franklin Betch, former member of Parliament, Bureti constituency, former cabinet minister, and Dr. Shem Ochodo, former member of Parliament for Rangwe constituency, a deputy presidential running candidates in 2013 general. Thank you for coming and giving your very qualified perspectives on our discussions tonight.
Thank
That's how we
you.
leave it on this discussion here at the Summit Studio. Of course, we here at KTN News at our election HQs will continue to be with you to bring the latest figures, bring you qualified analysis from different perspectives as we continue to receive the election results from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Of course, remember we have our teams from across the 47 counties to bring you the latest from there as well. Let's now give you the latest numbers. Asha.
Well, Ben, we're analyzing the counties. How is